Well, it's really good to welcome you. Our second session. So if this is your first time with us, you are particularly welcome. The way this goes is like this. The idea is that you come with whatever questions you want, or maybe there's some things that you've been trying that you're particularly pleased with, and you like to share those with other people that we can do something similar. Feel free just to chip in all the way through as you wish. I'm going to share this Slido with you, and if you go to slido.com, or if you want to, you can use the QR code there, and it will ask you to put in a number, and the number is 277878, and then you can just type in there where you're joining us from, which part of the country you are. It'd be interesting to know where we're having people joining us from. I'm just gonna have a slurp of my vodka before. It's not vodka really, it's whiskey. Just to keep us going. So, where are we from? Which part of the country are we coming from today? I know we've got Hajar from Birmingham, we've got Reading. There we are, Birmingham. I'm in sunny Norwich. Although it's not very sunny now, of course, it's dark outside and we're still at school. How about that? And I know we've got people joining us today from second one from Birmingham. We've got some joining us from London and Torquay and Cumbria and I forgot where else. Liverpool. We've got down here Sheffield. Yes. So there we are. Derby as well. Good. London. There's one from London. One's coming in. Let's just let that one in. Great. Okay. Well, in terms of questions now, thank you very much for the questions that have come. A couple of those are sort of hung over from the last session, not the people, just the questions. As I was getting used to Slido, I didn't quite scroll down far enough to see a couple of questions at the end. So I'm going to start off with those two. It's what do you think about getting pupils to clarify tasks in English? And the one at the bottom there, how do you give specific praise in the target language? As we go through this session, please feel free to just to add questions as you wish. Now, on my screen, it looks like I've got the questions. Can I just have a thumbs up if you can see the questions as well? You can. Brilliant. Excellent. So feel free during the course of this session just to add in questions. I'm going to throw some of the questions out as well. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but it'd be really good to get other people's perspectives too. So feel free to do that. Now, I've let one in there that's got a number as the name. Love to know who we've got in the session. Would you mind just letting us know either in the chat or just put your camera on so we know who you are? That would be really helpful. That's great, thank you. So let's make a start then. So what do you think about getting pupils to clarify tasks in the target language? Sorry, to clarify tasks in English. I do that sometimes. I don't do it often. Welcome, Tony. I don't do it often because what I don't want to do is to get into the position where pupils stop listening to any instructions I give or explanations I give in the target language because they know that the English is coming later. But for example, I have a year 7 group at the moment. This is their first year of Spanish, their first term indeed, and they're doing really well, actually. I'm really pleased with what they're doing. And I set them a task just this week. In fact, I can show you what that is. I'd love to show you on my visualizer, but it's not playing ball at the moment. So I'll show you like this. This is the task that they're doing. It's a Spanish class, and we're talking about school subjects and the things that we do at school. So they've learned all sorts of verbs such as to count, to write, to sing, to play an instrument, all those sorts of infinitives. They've also learnt the names of the subjects. They've learnt how to express an opinion. But what I wanted them to do here was to read these sentences, such as the first one says, we have to act and act out situations. And so that would be drama. And so they would start at the bottom and work up the sheet. So they start with the definition. In Spanish it says, tenemos que actuar y representar situaciones. Por qué is there, and then it's jumped that to find the subject. So arte dramático. And then once they've done that, then they can work down the page. So they'll say, whatever their opinion is, me encanta estudiar arte dramático porque tenemos que actuar y representar situaciones, for example. The next one says, tenemos que estudiar situaciones y personas del pasado. We have to study situations and people from the past. So it's history. So they find the subject here, they go up to the top of the page, and then they work down again. So, odio estudiar historia porque tenemos que estudiar situaciones y personas del pasado. Okay, so there's no right answer really for the opinion. That's just what their opinion is. There is a right answer, of course, for the subject and its definition. So what I wanted them to do, and that follows the example I put at the bottom of the page, is produce a sentence where they work their way down the page like that. So, me encanta estudiar historia porque tenemos que estudiar situaciones y personas del pasado. But there's a real opportunity for them to get it wrong, and I want them to get it right. So I gave them my instructions. I demonstrated it under the visualizer. We did one together. In fact, we did two together. Then I got someone to do the third one for us all. Then I gave them a chance to ask me any questions, which will be introduced really at this stage with ¿Cómo se dice en castellano? How do you say in Spanish? Then their question. Help them put their question into Spanish. Then I'd answer it. So you need to allow lots of time for this. And then they were off. So they'd stick this in their book. They'd stick it at the top of the page. So the bottom of the sheet goes at the top of their page so that they can then fold that down into their book and close their book. But when they're doing their work, they can lift it up and then they've got this on the same page that they're writing. So they're not sort of turning a page backwards and forwards. That tends to lead to mistakes. So having done all of that, when I felt, yes, I'm pretty sure they've all got it, but I just wanted to be absolutely sure, that was when I asked for un intérprete, for an interpreter to just explain the task to us all. So, un intérprete, por favor, para explicar a la clase la actividad. And then I got someone to do it. And then they got a point for doing that as well. Because that was a legitimate use of English, I felt, getting them to do a bit of interpreting. But in that way, they had to work for it. So yes, in terms of would I clarify tasks in English? Only if I really have to, but gradually I want to wean them off it. Okay. So that was a question about clarifying tasks in English. Is there anything anybody would like to chip in on this? Any perspectives on using English to clarify tasks? Anything anyone would like to say at this point? Please feel free just to unmute and jump in. Well, I have a slug of water. Okay, well, let's have a look then at the next question, which was about giving specific praise in the target language. This is a really good one because it's easy to just stay at the level of très bien, excellent, c'est super. Very easy to stay at that level, and that's fine actually. There's nothing wrong with that. But of course, if we can go beyond that, all the better. So how do you give specific praise in target language? Well, I think obviously it very much depends on what it is they're doing that deserves that praise, because even though the language may be new to them, because the class has seen, or that pupil has seen and knows what they've just done, that gives them a way into understanding it. So just supposing that at the start of term we've been at the level of muy bien, perfecto. In terms of giving more specific praise, we might say, just supposing they've answered a question well, has contestado perfectamente, or una respuesta correcta, muy bien. So it's still quite simple. I use a team competition that we talked a little bit about last time, which is very basic, really. It's just these little plastic cups with points in, and I put a cup on each table. And as they make a good contribution, I just drop a point in there, each team's cup. Now, up to half term, they stayed at the level of nos da un punto, por favor. Will you give us a point, please? But it was becoming clear to me that they needed something a bit more, and they could expand on that language. And for that reason, they have, that's the visual I was using before half term. Nos da un punto, por favor. And this half term, if I can find what I've done with it, there we are. We've started to justify why they need or deserve that point. And it might be that they're proposing it for themselves or for somebody else. So, nos da un punto, por favor, porque yo he acertado, because I got it right. Or it might be, nos da un punto, por favor, porque he dicho, because I said whatever. Well, this is good, because once you get this up and running, then I can use that, of course, for my praise. Un punto, porque has acertado. Un punto, porque has dicho. 1 point for you because you have said this. 1 point for you because you have got this right. It also shows the different persons of the verb. They've been using porque he acertado, because I got it right. And I can give a point because has acertado, because you've got it right. And it just helps to manipulating tenses or verb forms. But once that becomes part of the active language, it's much more comprehensible. So before I got them using he acertado, which is a bit of a mouthful for them, especially in their first term, I was using it quite a bit with them, giving points like un punto, nos da un punto por favor? Sí, un punto, porque has acertado. And using that repeatedly. And then only when I thought, okay, now's about the right time, then I could put it up for them to start using too. All right. Has anybody had any particular success with giving specific praise in the target language? Again, feel free just to unmute and chip in if you'd like to. Don't feel you have to either, but if you'd like to, you're very welcome to do that. Okay, well, let's look then. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
For example, I play a team game in my classroom. You just can't see me. I play team with some markers and miniman, so it's with the map. I think my head of department got that from somewhere. And anytime they use target language, they get the point. Now, I don't use the visual, how you have quisiera un punto, por favor. I'll write it on the board at the beginning for them to be able to just ask me in the target language, because I don't know how you juggle with the card. Saying, oh, quisiera un punto, por favor. Maybe I should have in my back or on the board, like already stick on, because I lose quite a lot of time sometimes. Like, okay, because they said, oh, can I have a point? I was like, sorry. Quisiera un punto, por favor. And then, porque. And then I'll try to give some answers on the board. Yeah. And then that's how they use it. And then I give them the point. And then at the end, we have cumulative points on the map. They move like in Spain.
That's very good.
Move from city to city.
Yeah. Can I just interrupt?
The
Yeah,
key stage 3, they love these games. Key stage 4, they a bit less
can I just check
playful.
if everyone
And
is able to hear?
at the end, when they arrive back to trade, then they win a prize. So we have like little toys or things like that.
Yeah. Can I just check if everyone was able to hear that? Because it was coming through a bit distorted on my
So
screen.
I don't know how you do you have them on your hand, your
Yeah.
the cards that you have made by hand, you have them in your hand, and you just yeah, go on.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to jump in at that point, if I may. The sound was really quite distorted. It's quite difficult to hear. I'm really sorry about that. I'm also not actually too sure who was being kind enough there to contribute. Was it Juanita? Was it you who was telling us that? Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah. So what I picked up, is everyone able to hear me clearly? Can I just have a thumbs up if you can? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the sound was coming through a little bit distorted, but what I did pick up was that in the team competition that you run, that you have visuals up on the screen, at the front on the wall to begin with, to enable pupils to ask for points. And that as they get points, they move around a map of Spain, I think was what I picked up there, which is a great idea. That's a really good idea because you can see which group is getting further and further around this map of Spain, and that's showing who's winning. That's really good. It's a very visual way of them seeing, as the lesson's going on, who's in the lead. That's really good. Thank you very much. I may well have missed a bit more. Do feel free to put that in the chat if you like to, and we can come back to that in a little bit. Okay, well, let's move on then to this third question. This was a really good one, and this one came in advance, which was great because it meant I've been able to dig a few things out of the file to show you. As I say, if you do have any further questions, please feel free just to add those in as we're going along, and I'll keep an eye on that so I can use the time well. But let's have a look at this one then. So how do you go about drilling longer, more complex sentences in Key Stage 4? That is a really good question. Okay. Now, there's a quick answer and there's a long answer. I will try and give you the quick answer. So, more complex sentences for Key Stage 4. It's a real priority, isn't it? Because we want to move beyond the single words or simple sentences. In many schools, the groups in Key Stage 4 are perhaps even more mixed ability than they were in Key Stage 3, particularly if there are sets in Key Stage 3, but there's only enough takers for one class in Key Stage 4, and it can be quite tricky managing all of that. But we need to, don't we, if they're going to be able to do well, and if they're going to be ready for things like A-level later on, if they want to. So I've got two things to show you on this. One is where if you've got like a particular grammatical structure that you want to explore. So say it was something like, and the example I've got is preceding direct objects in the perfect tense and making them agree. Now that's pretty complex. And it's one that I've often done either in year 10 or saved it for year 11. I have done it for younger ones with varying degrees of success. So we can look at that in terms of how do you drill that with Key Stage 4. And the other one is to look at mixed structures where there's not one particular grammatical structure, but lots of language nevertheless, and how you get pupils to use a range of language. So let's put it to the vote. Which would you like me to do first? We can either look at one structure, the preceding direct objects and the perfect tense with agreement, or we can look at the mixed structures first, which is more on a sort of topic language. So if you would like to see the preceding direct objects first, give me a thumbs up on your screen. And then if you would like to see the mixed structures first, let's have a thumbs up on your screen for that. I think that's the more popular one. Great. Okay, well that's what we'll look at. We'll look at the mixed structures. Now, let me just find what I've done with it. Okay, so this is something that I've been using this week with a Year 10 class, and we are looking at the topic of holidays. The example I've got here is in Spanish, but I do the same thing actually with when I'm teaching a French class. So it works in exactly the same way. So the question is, do you prefer your holidays abroad or in the UK? And getting them to think through some of the reasons why they might prefer one or the other. Now, I was really hoping to be able to use my visualizer. I'm just going to try one more time, but it wasn't playing ball earlier. No, it doesn't want to know, does it? So I'm not going to do that, but I will hold it up, which is not quite the same, but it will do. It will do the job. So it starts off with something that quite a few years ago I might have done just as a worksheet. And there's nothing wrong with doing it as a worksheet, but that's as far as it would have gone. But in this particular case, it's like a card sort. So they've got two titles that they put on their table. So prefiero pasar las vacaciones en el extranjero, o prefiero pasar las vacaciones en Gran Bretaña. So they have these on their table, and then I give them a strip of paper which has got several answers to that question. Okay, and that comes in a strip. So we get them to cut those up, put them on the table, and then working with a partner, they've basically got to categorize them. So I've got puedo viajar en avión y me encanta. Je peux voyager en avion et j'adore ça. I haven't looked at the French one for a while, so it's going to be fun. Se habla inglés y así es más fácil comunicarse con los demás. On parle anglais et comme ça c'est plus facile de communiquer avec les autres. No me gusta viajar en avión, en tren o en ferry. Je n'aime pas voyager en avion, en train ou en ferry. No tengo que cambiar mi dinero en euros u otra moneda. On n'est pas obligé de changer mon argent en euros, autre monnaie, and so on. Okay, so we've got several, but the phrases they're not all easy and they're not all complex. There is a bit of variety, and the idea behind that is that some will take away quite a bit from this, and some will take away a little bit less, but everybody should get some language that they can use to answer that question. Do you prefer holidays abroad or do you prefer them in the UK? So with their partner, they're putting these in categories, and the sorts of phrases they'll be using will be things like creo que es una opinión de la categoría prefiero pasar las vacaciones en el extranjero o prefiero pasar las vacaciones en Gran Bretaña. Pour moi, c'est une opinion pour les vacances en Grande-Bretagne ou à l'étranger. And they do that together. Okay, now they won't know all of the vocabulary, and some of it they're going to have to try and work it out. They're going to have to identify what's the key word. Okay, so then we go through the answers. Now, as we do that, it needs clarification, but again, we do this as a team competition. So let's take this one for example. I'm just trying to, this is the one that I would start with. No me gusta viajar en avión, en tren, en ferry. So I don't like traveling by plane, train, or ferry. But I want to know what everybody else's answers are without them copying each other. So, si piensas que es de la categoría en el extranjero, levántate. And so everybody who thinks that is for holidays abroad, they all have to stand up at the same time. So without sort of looking to see who else is going to stand up. They've all got to stand up at the same time if that's their view. If they think it's for holidays in the UK, then they stand up. So we establish that. Okay, once we've established that, we need to do a little bit more with it. So now I'm going to share with you, I don't use PowerPoint very often, but this is a time when I do. Let me just get the right thing to show you. There we go. All right. So get rid of that. There we go. Oh, getting Office ready for you. That is not a good sign. Yeah, accept. I had a few gremlins just before we started the session today, and there we go. Right, that should work now. So, prefiero pasar las vacaciones en Gran Bretaña o en el extranjero. I think you're probably seeing my presenter view here. I'm sorry about that. I won't try and fight with it at this stage. Porque. Now, at this point, they've got to work out with their partner in competition with the rest of the class how you fill in the rest of that sentence. Porque me gusta conocer otras culturas is what I'm looking for. So they tell their partner first, and then I've got this. So I chuck this at them, which comes as a bit of a surprise because it's lead lined, and they catch it and they tell me what they think that phrase is. It's got to be perfect, and usually they'll get some of the words but not all of the words. So me gusta, I don't know, correr otras culturas, and they can't remember what that middle word was, especially if it was new. Casi está bien, casi. Hay un error, and see if someone else can put it right. If they can't put it right, I might identify which word is wrong and see if they can get it right then. If they can, then I can show the answer. If I'm really not getting anywhere, I'll show it to them. Bueno, me gusta conocer otras culturas. Todos, we will say it together. Bueno, es una frase para pasar las vacaciones en Gran Bretaña o en el extranjero. They tell me again, we confirm it, and then we all say it together. Prefiero pasar las vacaciones en el extranjero porque me gusta conocer otras culturas. And then it's on to the next one. Prefiero pasar las vacaciones en Gran Bretaña o en el extranjero porque, and then see if they can do it. Tell their partner, then they tell me. If they get it right, they get a point for their team. If they don't quite get it right, see if somebody else can, and then we show them the answer. Puedo viajar en avión y me encanta. ¿Es una frase para pasar las vacaciones en Gran Bretaña o en el extranjero? They tell me, we confirm, en el extranjero, and then we all say it together. Prefiero pasar las vacaciones en el extranjero porque puedo viajar en avión y me encanta. And so it goes on. And so I can do this with several sentences all the way through. And in that way, what you're trying to do is to get everybody saying all of those sentences together. Now, there's a next stage, and this is where it goes a little bit beyond simply trying to recall the sentence and thinking about correct and incorrect sequences of words. And it's this. So I take each of those sentences, the sentences that they had, that they were categorizing at the beginning, they're all out of the way now. They're in their little pocket and put away. And now I give them a copy of the same sentences on cards. But as you can possibly see, all of the words are in the wrong order. So every pair in the class gets a copy of that and a pair of scissors if they haven't got it. And all they do is just snip between the words. So it's very, very quick. And then put them on the table. And then what they've got to do is put those words in the right order. And I give them, I don't know, about 15 seconds, something like that. And then I count down from 10 to 0. When I can see that most people are pretty much there, I give them 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, count down from 10 to 0, and then they have to put their hands on their heads. The reason for that is, as I go around looking at what people have done, I don't want them to, see what someone else has done and change their own. I want to see what they've produced. So hands on their heads for that. I go around with my points and just drop a point on their table if they've got it right. And even if it's a big class, even if it's a class of, I don't know, 30, 32, something like that, it's pretty quick to be able to go around and read those, because of course they've got one per pair, so there may be 15 to read, but it's pretty quick. You can see very quickly if they've got them right, or if there's one word out of place, it's wrong. Now that's a really good activity to do, and the important thing is that each sentence is on a different color of card, because otherwise these little tiny cards are very quickly going to be mixed up, and then it becomes an impossible task. There's no way they're going to be able to undo that. So once they've done it, I can give them a little envelope each. They can put all their pieces in, and when they go home, they can have another go at exactly the same task that they were doing in class, because they've got the pieces. If I'm able to, I'll go around and give another copy so that the second person in the pair has also got a set they can use, and they're off. And it just means that they get practicing. It's quite a long-winded way of explaining all this, but it's a good way of getting them thinking about every single word in the sentence. And because you've got a range of difficulty from the very easy sentences, let's pick an easy one. Well, there was me gusta conocer otras culturas. That's pretty easy. In fact, I said the easy ones to you. Puedo viajar en avión y me encanta. To the very difficult ones. This is the most difficult of the lot. It's quite a long one as well. La foto que está en mi pasaporte es terrible y no me gusta enseñársela a nadie. So the photo that's in my passport is terrible, and I don't like showing it to anybody. That's difficult if they've not come across that before. Now you might be thinking, why do so many? Wouldn't it be better just to do 3 or 4? So I've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think 9 is the limit, really. Because within the class, I may well have someone who would struggle to give more than one reason, but I might also have someone else in the class who is really, really strong, and I need to give something for them too. So the idea is that when it comes to a question like, do you prefer your holidays abroad or in the UK? In a sort of a speaking test type situation, we've catered for everybody. You get someone who can say, well, I don't like traveling by plane, train or ferry, and that's the end of their answer. You might get someone else who says, I don't like traveling, I prefer holidays in the UK because I don't like traveling by plane, train or ferry. You get somebody else who will say, well, I like going abroad for my holidays because I like getting to know the cultures. But sometimes I don't like going abroad for my holidays because I don't like traveling by plane, train or ferry. And then you might get someone else who will say, well, I like my holidays in the UK because there are lots of places that I've not seen in my country. And sometimes I like going abroad because I can get to know the cultures. And so when I think about it, I decide, yes, I think I prefer this. And they come up with their conclusion. And in that way, they're able to keep going, but they're not necessarily having to come up with something completely from scratch. They're able to draw on some memorized language and combining it with chunks from other parts of the activity that they've been using. Okay, I've talked quite a bit there. Is there anyone who would like to ask any questions on that, either on the procedure or the thinking behind it, or the running it in the class? Any questions at all? You're very welcome to do that.
I have a question which I don't know, maybe it's not related exactly to this. That was really clear, and I can see how that would work and how it could be adapted for different lessons. That's great. My question is slightly, one second. Sorry, I'm in a meeting. Just leave it. Sorry about it. Yeah, thanks. Great. It's just related to the point systems. So I've seen different point systems which are great to motivate students, and I've tried different ones, but I've I found some of them a bit of a faff. You know, collecting different bits of paper for different classes and trying to remember who was getting when and what and what prize they were getting. And so in the end, I've just used, I just used Team A and Team B for various different exercises, and the team that gets the most points within the lesson gets to leave first, or, and I've got various other different motivators, but I'd be interested to know what other sort of reward or point systems people use in order to motivate, which isn't maybe related so closely to the target language, but I can see how it is a motivating part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a motivator, and the language they can use in getting those points.
Exactly. Can I have a point and
really rich.
Provoke them and things like that?
Yeah. Which language do you teach, Alan?
Spanish.
Spanish. Okay. Now I've got loads I could say on it, but is there anybody else who would like to chip in with anything that they've either tried or done? You'd be very welcome to do that. Okay, well, I'll say a few things, and then, as I say, if anybody would like to chip in, please feel free to do so. There's no right answer on this, actually. There's all sorts of ways of going about it. So I can tell you what I do personally. Let me just make sure I've got the focus of the question right. So in terms of running it, do you mean, Alan, or the language that you pull out of it?
Yeah, I think mainly running it. I have some good ideas about how you can use points to motivate, to provoke that target language. You know, awarding the points to the wrong people, and then getting them to use some transactional language and using that to teach other things. But sometimes I feel like the point system I use is not very motivating in itself.
And I think the most important thing is that you feel that while you're running it, that you can still concentrate on your lesson and all of that, because that can it can get so bogged down with all these things. So one way I've seen, which is quite a popular way of doing it, is just to have a pupil stand at the board, and you write team 1, team 2, and they just chalk up in batches of 5 points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, strike through. 1, 2, 3, 4, strike through, and then change the pupil every 10 minutes, so that they're not just sort of standing at the board all lesson. That's one way of doing it, and that's quite simple to operate. And then all the way through the lesson, you can be saying "we umpire un punto allá" or whatever, and that frees up the teacher quite a bit. I have done that. I don't use that ever such a lot, because I tend to forget there's a pupil standing at the board and they could be there for a week. And they get hungry, of course. So I tend not to do that, but there's no reason why you shouldn't. At the beginning of the year, when I'm setting it up with the class for the first time, I always use these cups, because I find it fairly manageable. So my class, as it's set out, I would show you, but it's a state, so I'm not going to. It's like set out like a horseshoe, one horseshoe inside another. This classroom is a little bit narrow, so my inside horseshoe is sort of pushed together. I've got 2 tables and a table that way, and then a horseshoe around the outside. And so I just go straight down the middle, grupo 1, grupo 2, and a cup, grupo 1, grupo 2. And then I've got these cards in my pocket. They're just little thumbs up cards, and I've just got them in my trouser pocket. And then all the way through the lesson, as they say something, I just drop it in, and so it goes. And they can't necessarily see who's in the lead, and I just keep going. And then at the end of the lesson, we've got the, I sort of cover it a bit so they can't quite see who's got how many. Bueno, ¿qué grupo va a ganar? Grupo uno va a ganar o grupo dos va a ganar? Just trying to get them going on that. And say, bueno, grupo uno, ¿cuántos puntos tenéis? Bueno, vamos a contar, and we all count together. Uno, dos, and so on, all the way through. 10 puntos, un aplauso para grupo uno. Bueno, grupo dos. Grupo dos, ¿tienen más o menos? Más o menos. ¿Cuántos? ¿Cuántos exactamente? Bueno, grupo 1 tenía 10 puntos. Grupo 2, 12, 14, 3. Bueno, ¿cuántos puntos? Just to get a bit of suspense going, but also to, you know, that language is really meaningful in that situation because they really want to know who's won, and they probably haven't been keeping count all the way through. So then we count. Uno, dos, tres, grupo uno. And so we declare our winner. So I really do that for the first half term because it's very simple for me to run it. It's also really easy for them to understand it. And that's the other part of what makes it work. They have to understand the procedure, how they're getting points and so on. It's only usually after half term that I then go to 3 or 4 groups. And I do that mainly because if I stick at the level where I've got just 2 groups, then I find that some pupils will hide. You know, there's some pupils who'll be very quiet, and they're quite happy for someone else to win all the points for their team. And so just to try and increase the level of participation, which is really the point of it, then I can, instead of having just 2 teams, left side of the room, right side of the room, I'll go for 4 teams if the class is of that size. So again, so I've got my horseshoe. So one side of the room, that's Grupo Uno, the back line, that's Grupo Dos, the other side is Grupo Tres, and then the block of tables in the middle of my room, that's Grupo Cuatro. And so I put a cup on the front desk of each group. The group at the back, it's not easy for me to leap over tables and pupils without doing myself a mischief. So Grupo Dos, I leave their cup on my table at the front, so I can just keep dropping points in this as well. So in that way, there's you know, that gets around the whole group. It also adds a little bit to the mix because it's not always this side of the room that's winning, which is something else I wanted to get away from. In terms of seating plans, it's quite useful as well. Once we've had a half-term holiday, I know the class pretty well by that point. And so when I reseat them, I just make sure that there are some stronger ones in every team, because otherwise, if it's always the same group that wins, it gets a bit dull. You know, they know what's going to happen before they start, and that's a demotivator. So so there's that. And then the next stage may be where you actually give individual points. It could be that. I've done that sometimes. Where I've got a list of pupils on a piece of paper that I can just shove under the visualizer, but they're arranged in blocks. You know, each block is a team, and I don't usually run this for very long. I might run it for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, depending on how many lessons you get in a week. And then at the end of the lesson, you need to allow a good 5 minutes for this. You go round and we say, ¿cuántos puntos tienes? Tengo 3 puntos. ¿Cuántos puntos tienes? Tengo 4 puntos. And it does show up some patterns as well as to who's contributing the most. And also pupils who perhaps I've thought are not contributing, turns out they are, because they're getting points. And I've had it in my head that they're not really taking part that much. So that's quite a helpful corrective for me. It also gives rise to the phrase, no tengo ninguno, which is a good one. I mean, that's a phrase that you don't often get an opportunity to teach in real communication, but that works. Does that help a bit? Great.
Yes, that does. And actually, maybe there's more actual language that I could elicit from them and practice with them on reflection, having heard you go through it. So maybe that would be something for another session.
Yeah. It's I think the key thing is that because we're the ones at the front of the room, we've got to, the way we run it has got to be within what we feel we can do. Do you know what I mean? For that particular time in the term. So if you've got a lesson which the rest of the lesson is fairly involved, and you've really got to have your head around that, the team competition may be a step too far for that particular day, and you might decide to suspend it for a day and bring it back the next day. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Or it might be that you think, well, I just want to get it started. I just want to find my way around it, find out what goes well, find out what doesn't, and keep it really simple to start with. And then as time goes on, introduce more things or more phrases. You might get more of an idea of what you could do. That's great. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so now just looking at my slider, I can't see any more questions, but I'm very happy to take any more. Anybody else like to chip in, either with a team competition that you've done and been pleased with, or something you've learned from doing a team competition, or any other question that you might want to do? We've got about 5 minutes left, so there is time for another question if anyone's got one. Any more for any more?
James, do you mind if I chip in an idea?
Please do.
I'm sorry that I'm late to the party, so I apologise sincerely if this has been covered already.
Not at all. That's fine.
But a really it's great to be here, and this is not something that I use often, or indeed something that I'd advise people to use often. But this was picked up on an idea that did the rounds a few years ago on social media about a way of generating competition in lessons in different subjects that I've incorporated into a bit of a routine with classes that I really trust, and classes with whom there's an atmosphere of sort of mutual trust and suspension of disbelief. But it's that thing where you put a window on the board. So it's not a team competition, it's an individual competition, and your window has 4 boxes in. And if somebody does something good, you can reward them by putting the name in the box. And very quickly it fills up with 4 names.
Yeah.
And so the deal is with your class that there'll be some reward at the end of the lesson for the 4 people who are in the box at the end. And of course, if the window is full with 4 names in it and they do something brilliant, they get to remove somebody else from the box, which is why you've got to have that sense of trust between the students, and that good atmosphere among the class. But that can elicit some quite nice language about justifying your choice of person to remove, or explaining why you're doing what you do. And in French, it's led to some nice phrases like "parce que il ou elle m'a trahi," stuff like that. And you can give them a load of quite safe reasons for removing and replacing somebody in the window. And even kind of down to more traditional things where they're justifying why they think they deserve to go in the window and stuff like that. So linguistically, it's really rich, but it's also high risk in terms of the structure, leading to students being in direct competition for being rewarded. But linguistically, it's been really nice to do.
That's really good. I've never heard of that, actually. I like that. That's really good. So I mean, if you've got a class where you feel this is going to go okay, they're mature enough to handle being booted out of the window or thrown out of the window, or whatever you want to call it, that's really good. I like that.
It's a good development of the team competitions when they go a bit stale with a class that you might have had for a long time.
That's really good. There was oh no, am I going to be able to remember her name? I can't remember the name straight off the top of my head. It will probably come back to me as soon as we finish this. But there was a teacher who was producing team competitions. I did put a link to it on my blog, actually. Really good team competitions. And actually, it reminded me of it. Yes, when I think it was Juanita, when you talked about moving around Spain, it reminded me of that. So on my blog, which is jamesstubbs.wordpress.com, there's a whole series on team competitions. I've still got one more article I want to write on that, which I'll probably over Christmas, I reckon. But on one of those posts on team competitions. I did put a link to her work because it was really impressive. Just wish I could remember her name off the top of my head. There we go. Well, it's been great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions and for what you've contributed. We have some more dates coming up. So now let me just take that off my screen. And the next date is, no, I've got to try and remember this because in restarting my computer, just before we all came on, it closed all the things I had open. So let me just have a quick look here. Aha, I think we are there. There we are, I've got it. Right. So let me just share that screen with you without necessarily trying to actually put the PowerPoint on. That's all misbehaving today. There we are. That's it. So the date of the next time we get together is the 26th of January. So that's a couple of weeks into, 3 weeks into the new term. So hopefully by that point, we're into a new term, starting new things with our classes. Maybe there'll be some things that have gone well and that's something you'd like to share with us all, or maybe you've tried something and it's not quite worked and you're not sure why. And maybe someone can help out, and I'll be very happy to have a go at that myself as well. So do feel free to sign up for that. I'll for all those who've been in touch separately from the Eventbrite link, I'll make sure you are invited to that. And for those of you who come through Eventbrite, I'll make sure you get an invite for that too. So there's my email address, jstubbs@langley.school.co.uk. That's the blog, jamesstubbs@wordpress.com, and on Twitter, I don't tweet much, but I do have a look, at JamesStubbsLang. Do feel free to follow along. And I'll also send you a link to a Slido, so that if you want to, as things crop up over the course of the term, and you think, oh, I've got a question about this, I'm going to forget it, you just feel free to put the question on there, and then we can look at that together when we meet. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I'll make sure that you get the YouTube link for this video tomorrow, and then you can, if you've missed the beginning, you can go back to that. I just ask that you keep the link within your school. Excuse me. As those who are here, they've given their consent to this being recorded, knowing that it's a private video. So please don't distribute it any further than that. But it's great to see you all, and look forward to seeing you again another time.